Family Tree DNA reports all segments of matching DNA, even the really small ones. So how can you take your match list and narrow it down to those matches that really matter? Howdy, I'm Andy Lee with Family History Fanatics, and this is a segment of DNA. In last week's video, I mentioned how Family Tree DNA includes all the small segments when they're calculating the total number of centimorgans you share with a match. I also mentioned that in identifying quality matches, you need to correct for these small segments. Today, I'm going to show you how you can do that. Basically, we match a lot of small segments with people because we come from the same general groups, not because we are related in any kind of genealogical significant timescale. So most of these small segments are false matches. Now, while it's great that Family Tree DNA provides this information so that genetic genealogists can pore over it and play with it and maybe come up with some new tools where it can be useful, for the average researcher, it's something that causes noise and may confuse you as you're trying to figure out how closely related somebody is. Once we figure out a way to tell the false matches from the real ones on small segments, this information will be invaluable. Until then, for the most of us, we can just ignore it. I showed these numbers in the last video of my adjusted and unadjusted Family Tree DNA quality matches. You can see that for the largest range, from 250 to 600 centimorgans, there is no difference. I have 2 matches in each category. And that's because at this range, it is dominated by large segments of shared DNA. And so while you may have some smaller segments of shared DNA that you match with that person, they don't significantly add to the overall amount of shared DNA. But in the next range, from 100 to 250 centimorgans, we see the first big change. I went from 8 matches down to 1 match. That is a loss of almost 90% of my matches. And that's because at this point, all of those small segments of DNA add up to be a significant amount of the overall total of shared DNA you have with that person. Now, the next 2 categories are even more dramatic. Remember, I lost 8 matches from that 100 to 250, and those 8 matches show up now in my 50 to 100. Before, I had 166 matches, so only 4 of those matches actually stayed in that category. I lost about 98% of my matches from that category. And finally, the last category, from 35 to 50 centimorgans. Again, all of my matches in the adjusted came from the 50 to 100 centimorgans, so I lost 100% of my matches from that category, just by eliminating all of these small segments of DNA. So let me show you how you can eliminate the small segments in your match list. It's going to involve a spreadsheet and some formulas, and I'll walk you through it step by step. Now, the first thing you need to do is you need to go over to Family Tree DNA and you need to download your segment match list. In Family Tree DNA, when you're logged in, you don't want to go over to your matches. What you have down at the bottom of your matches is the download matches, and that is just all of your matches, one line at a time. What you want to do is you want to go to the chromosome browser. And in the chromosome browser, you can download all segments. As you click on that, it's going to download a CSV file. And it's going to take a couple of minutes to be able to do that. Once you've downloaded that file, you can open it up in a spreadsheet program. I'm going to be using Google Sheets, but you can use any spreadsheet program that you want, although the formulas may be slightly different from what you need to do. I've anonymized all of this data, but what you can see is this has the name of my match for that segment. It has which chromosome that match is on, the start and the end location of that match. It has the length in centimorgans of that segment, and it has how many SNPs are part of that matching segment. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to freeze the top row, and that's so that my headers stay in the same place. Now when I scroll down, I always have those headers to be able to know which is in what column. So let me show you what a difference these small matches can make with just a couple of examples. We'll take this first person, Kyson Howell. You can see I have several matches for Kyson Howell. And if I go and I add up all of those matches, it ends up being 43 centimorgans, which sounds like a quality match based on what I described before. But as you look at it a little bit further, you see there's only one of those segments that is more than 6 centimorgans. And so the way that other companies would report this match is not 43 centimorgans, they'd report it as 12 or maybe even 12.5 centimorgans. Here's another match, Laney Cabrera. Now if I go and I highlight all of the segments that I match with Laney, and there's even more than what I had with Kyson, it ends up being 60 centimorgans, which again is normally something I'd actually get pretty excited about because 60 centimorgans is firmly in the third cousin range, and third cousins are pretty easy if you have a couple of them to help to figure out how you might be related. Unfortunately, as we look back over it, there's only a couple of places where these segments are more than about 6 centimorgans. There's one here that is 8.9 centimorgans, and there's one here that's 11.8 centimorgans. So really, this is not a 60 centimorgan match. This is a 21 centimorgan match. So it's not as good as what I thought, and it takes it out of that quality match definition that I gave of being at least 35 centimorgans or more. So yeah, those small segments can add up. So let's go about removing those small segments. In order to do this, we're going to sort the entire table by the centimorgans. And I can do that by using Control A, and that will select all of the data. And then I can go up to my data, and I want to click on Sort Range. I'm going to tell it that it has a header row, and then I'm going to sort it by centimorgans, and I'm going to sort it from largest to smallest, so from Z to A. I click Sort, and now it has my largest segments at the top and my smallest segments at the bottom. So I'm now going to decide what is my threshold, and in this case I'm going to just use 6. And like I said, many of the companies use somewhere between 5 and 10 centimorgans, so you can decide what you want, and if you want to play around with it, that's fine. But let me show you what 6 centimorgans does. I'm going to scroll down until I find just 6 centimorgans. And this is going to be only about 10% of the way through the entire information. You can see right here, here is where 6 centimorgans is. So on the line right below that 6 centimorgans, I'm going to click on the line to highlight it. Then I'm going to scroll down to the very bottom of the spreadsheet, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key and highlight that last line. So now all those lines are highlighted between 6 centimorgans and the end. Then I can just right click, and I want to delete all of those rows. And all those rows are instantly deleted. You can see where I was at over 30,000 rows, now I'm only down to 3,400. So about 90% of all of my matching segments are gone, because 90% of those matching segments were less than 6 centimorgans. Next now is I want to figure out how much each of my matches has. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make the start and the end location small because I really don't need those columns right now. And so you can see where some other things are going on. I'm going to make that H column a little bit smaller. I'm going to use this J or I, J, and K column. The first one in the very first cell on column I, I'm going to type in this formula. Unique, parentheses, B colon B, parentheses. What that is that's telling the spreadsheet to look at column B, all of column B, and pull out all of the unique names that it can find. So it's only going to give me one occurrence of each name instead of a dozen occurrences for every segment. And there, now I have my list of unique names. So the next thing I need to do is I need to count up how much segments and how much centimorgans is in each one. So I'm just going to put a title header here. This is segments and this is centimorgans. And again, I'm going to use a couple of simple formulas. The first formula for segments is going to be equal. And we're going to do count if. And this is going to be B to B. And now what we want to do is we want to tell it what it wants to look for. So in this case, we're looking for everything that is this I2. So I'm just going to click on that cell there. And you can see that formula BBI2. And I close my parentheses. And it's going to tell me how many segments Emerald Forbes has. It has 22 segments. Now when I go and I grab that and I just click Control C and I go to the one right below it and paste it with Control V, it's going to count all the segments for Aurora Alvarez. I'm going to copy this down to the rest of the cells once I get this other formula in. Now this formula is also very similar. We're going to go and it's going to be equals sum if. So before we were doing a count if, now we want to add up all of the centimorgans. So sum if, and it's the same thing. We want to look at that column B first. And we want to tell it that, hey, whenever that column B equals this I2, and then the last one is we want to tell it which column to actually sum. And so that's going to be our centimorgans column, which is FF. And you can see that the BB column is highlighted and the FF column is highlighted, and that cell that it's looking at is highlighted. And I hit enter there, and it adds up all the centimorgans for that person. Now, if I go and I copy these two, my segment formula and my centimorgan formula, with Control C, then I put my cursor right below it on line 3, and I go to the bottom here of where the names stop, and I go to the column K, and then Control V, and I've pasted that formula all the way through. And so now what I want to do is I actually want to take all of column I, all of column J, and all of column K. I'm going to copy them, and then I'm going to paste them in the same spot, only I'm going to paste the values only. That way I will be able to sort this and change this around as I need to. So paste those values, and I can go, and if I want to delete this information, I can. Or if I want to just hide this information, I can hide this information, so I'm just working with this. So I have all this information now. I'm going to highlight it again. I'm going to go up to my data, and I'm going to go to the sort range one more time. It has a header, and I want to sort by total centimorgans. And I'm going to again sort from largest to smallest. And there you go. I've removed all of these small segments out of my list. And now what you see basically the same type of list that if one of the other companies had this data, what they would report. And so it's something that's comparable with any of the other companies. Now this process doesn't change the amount of shared DNA you have with second cousins and closer, because you already share a significant amount of DNA. However, you're going to see a large change in the number of matches between 35 centimorgans and 250 centimorgans. I hope this little tutorial was helpful for you and that you can find which of your family tree DNA matches are really the quality matches that you want to research. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and make sure you share it with your friends.